Well, hello again. It's Elisa Maria from Elisa Maria Designs. Welcome back. That was me. Welcome back, and welcome if you are new. I am giving you a little peek at what I have completed of Quiet Snow while we read. Rebecca. How about that last chapter? Oh my, I'm still not over it. But I had some time tonight to diamond paint. It was really quiet. And I got myself all comfortable. So it was like, oh, tomorrow I just have to read. But I was on the struggle bus throughout this entire diamond painting. What happens to our putty and wax when the seasons change? I've been diamond painting now for 3 years, and I think that I'm just going to learn my lesson and just like when the seasons change, I'm just going to throw away the putty and the wax that I've been using and just get all new, which I did. I actually got a delivery today from Tracy's DP World, and I got her, I think it's like Christmas snow or winter snow putty, and I got the little lily pad with the snowman on it, and I got a snowflake cover minder. And I was like, well, okay, I think I want to do a separate unboxing for that because I got something else, though I can't remember what the heck it was. And like do all my unboxings together. But I always use my Art Dot Blue putty, and I don't know if it's cold in my house. This is the type of heat that I have. My blue Art Dot putty has become gummy and really just a pain. I am setting up my washi tape here, and I cleaned out all my pens, and I was gonna take that part out, but I'm cleaning them out. I'm showing you there's fresh putty going in, fresh wax. Sometimes I get in the mood to use wax. I don't know why. I mean, I think it's just a different feel and a different texture. And I even went back to using some of my old placers, the old metal ones. But I love my Diamond Art Club Skinny. When that is loaded just right, I love that placer. And I think that that's another problem. I think I don't know how to load yet. After 3 years, I don't know how to load putty. I don't know how to load wax. I try, overloading. Sometimes I watch people and they do those minute shorts, and it's like they just kind of push their placer into whatever wax or putty. You could tell when they're diamond painting, there's like putty or wax shooting out of and I'm like, how do they not pick up other drills in their tray? How do they not have putty on their canvas? Okay, so maybe it's being edited out. But why would you even diamond paint like that? It's just so frustrating. So I had a piece of, there's my new snowflake cover, but I had a piece of Diamond Art Club of the white putty. And it just wasn't happening. It was like, no, I'm not going in. You'll see. You'll see when I take it out. It's like, no, I'm not going in. I really like that putty. I like it in the pen. I like that pen that you get in a Diamond Art Club kit. It just wasn't having it. It's like, no, I'm not going in. And so I had to take my blue Art Dot putty out, and that was just like the first, line that I put down. I had putty on the canvas, and I take my cuticle nippers and I'm pulling the putty out. But it was just so like, I'm like, is it too late for me to be doing this? Because I really want to sit down and I really want to get another block done, which, fast forward, I do get that block done. But I'll tell you, throughout the whole process, I was just like on the struggle bus. I'm like, what the heck? Like, what gives? Like, what do I need? I feel like I watch other curators and creators that um, diamond paint, and I never see them actually having this struggle that I have, where it just looks like the placer or the putty or whatever it is, just not happening, not working. But I think what I'm going to do this weekend is I'm throwing out all my putty. I'm throwing it all out. It's just not like, why would I use it? Because I have it, and it's just giving me such a struggle. And I have my new Christmas snow I think it is, from Tracy. And that's a fresh putty. I would imagine that she made a fresh putty. Because I have Christmas snow from last year, and I don't know if that's going to be working. How long do you keep your putty? There's a question. And when it comes to wax, I don't buy other waxes. I did it one time when I first started diamond painting. I bought wax, and I just was like, what the heck am I doing wrong? You know, if it's in the summer, it's sweating. If it's in the winter, it's like a frozen block. And then it's like, go put it in the refrigerator. Or, take it out of the refrigerator now, put it in the freezer. Or go and get it now and like make it come to room temperature. Oh my God. I'm like, no, I can't do this. So I think I bought wax once in my entire 3 years of diamond painting. Now I just use the purple wax from Dreamer Designs, which I like. And I use the red wax that comes with Diamond Art Club. But I have to tell you, I can tell that my purple wax that I love, have a lot of it because I buy a lot of Dreamer Design. I can tell it's like maybe a year or two old and it's getting gummy. So there is a shelf life on this stuff. I'm thinking that there's a shelf life on this stuff. So don't drive yourself nuts. Throw it all away. Get fresh stuff. As long as you can guarantee that it's fresh stuff, that it's fresh. You're getting fresh putty. So with that, I would get like seasonal stuff. That's what I would do. So I'm getting ready to read Rebecca chapter 13. It's a long one. And the last one had me pulling my hair out of my head. And I had a few thoughts like, why is it that unnamed narrator, is walking around this museum? Because I picture Manderley like a museum, the way that people come in and they see it. They have the public come in and take a tour. I think of it as a museum. And maybe that's why the staff is the way that they are. And to their credit, the new Mrs. De Winter has never said, I'm happy to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you and you getting to know me. I'd like to meet with you, and I would like to know how things are done. And, is there any room for improvement? Max did say to her, when you broke the little China doll, the little Cupid, why didn't you just tell Mrs. Danvers, can you please get this mended? You don't have to explain to her why you broke it. You don't have to apologize to her. You don't have to worry about how she feels about you. Like, I understand that part of it too. But also, Max did not say, like, he married a servant, right? This is like going to go see your favorite rock star and he pulls a fan out of the audience and he marries a fan. I mean? Like, it's like something like that. You married the servant. Or, it's like royalty marrying a commoner. We'll see how that's going. And, it's like, she's a servant. You married a woman, young, a child. You're admitting that you didn't give her any room. So now why not rectify the mistakes that you're making also and say to her, unnamed narrator that I married, let's sit down and talk, because you're right. You are not accustomed to this life. Let me tell you how it's done. And you just do it this way, and you don't have to feel that you are out of place or that it's wrong what you are saying. These are the people that run Manderley. They need just concise, clear instruction. And they're looking for you to give it to them. And if you're not going to give it to them, then they are going to keep referring to the way Rebecca did things, because she was the last one, other than I'm sure. It would be very interesting. And I found that conversation, that when she was asking who decorated this room and when was it decorated last, and why were these things being put in here? These very expensive things. Were they in here when this was your mother's morning room? And that's the other thing. These servants have been with this family. It's like they come into this family at a very young age, as we see with Clarice. And they kind of like die there. They serve them until they're about 100 years old, and then they just die, you know? And I think that they are looking at the way things are done through the generations. Maxim's mother had that room, and maybe Rebecca followed suit and ran that morning room and the household the way that his mother did. Maybe she did make change. I don't know. Rebecca is this ghost flying around this place. Um, we really don't know. Maybe she ran down to the boathouse in the cottage for her own sanity, right? Maybe it wasn't anything, um, you know, like, oh, she had this other life and, and she was this big socialite and there was something else going on down there. Maybe she ran down there for her own sanity to get the hell out of that household. Who knows? We're going to find out because chapter 13 is coming right up. I'll see you at the end. Bye. Maxim had to go up to London at the end of June to some public dinner, a man's dinner, something to do with the county. He was away for 2 days and I was left alone. I dreaded his going. When I saw the car disappear around the sweep in the drive, I felt exactly as though it were to be a final parting and I should never see him again. There would be an accident, of course, and later on in the afternoon, when I came back from my walk, I should find Frith, white and frightened, waiting for me with a message. The doctor would have rung up from some cottage hospital. You must be very brave, he would say. I'm afraid you must be prepared for a great shock. And Frank would come, and we would go to the hospital together. Maxim would not recognize me. I went through the whole thing as I was sitting at lunch. I could see the crowd of local people clustering round the churchyard at the funeral, and myself leaning on Frank's arm. It was so real to me that I could scarcely eat any lunch, and I kept straining my ears to hear the telephone should it ring. I sat out in the garden under the chestnut tree in the afternoon, with a book on my lap, but I scarcely read it at all. When I saw Robert come across the lawn, I knew it was the telephone, and I felt physically sick. A message from the club, madam, to say Mr. De Winter arrived 10 minutes ago. I shut up my book. Thank you, Robert. How quickly he got up. Yes, madam, a very good run. Did he ask to speak to me or leave any special message? No, madam, just that he arrived safely. It was the porter speaking. All right, Robert. Thanks very much. The relief was tremendous. I did not feel sick any more. The pain had gone. It was like coming ashore after a channel crossing. I began to feel rather hungry, and when Robert had gone back into the house, I crept into the dining room through the long window and stole some biscuits from the sideboard. I had 6 of them, Bath Olivers, and an apple as well. I had no idea I was so empty. I went and ate them in the woods in case one of the servants should see me on the lawn from the windows, and then go and tell the cook that they did not think Mrs. De Winter cared for the food prepared in the kitchen, as they had just seen her filling herself with fruit and biscuits. The cook would be offended, and perhaps go to Mrs. Danvers. Now that Maxim was safe in London, and I had eaten my biscuits, I felt very well and curiously happy. I was aware of a sense of freedom, as though I had no responsibilities at all. It was rather like a Saturday when one was a child. No lessons and no prep. One could do as one liked. One put on an old skirt and a pair of sand shoes and played hares and hounds on the common with the children who lived next door. I had just the same feeling. I had not felt like this all the time I had been at Manderley. It must be because Maxim had gone to London. I was rather shocked at myself. I could not understand it at all. I had not wanted him to go. And now this lightness of heart, this spring in my step, this childish feeling that I wanted to run across the lawn and roll down the bank. I wiped the biscuit crumbs from my mouth and called to Jasper. Perhaps I was just feeling like this because it was such a lovely day. We went through the happy valley to the little cove. The azaleas were finished now. The petals lay brown and crinkled on the moss. The bluebells had not yet faded. They made a solid carpet in the woods above the valley, and the young bracken was shooting up, curling in green. The moss smelt rich and deep, and the bluebells were earthy, bitter. I lay down in the long grass beside the bluebells with my hands behind my head and Jasper at my side. He looked down at me panting, his face foolish, the saliva dripping from his tongue and his heavy jowl. There were pigeons somewhere in the trees above. It was very peaceful and quiet. I wondered why it was that places are so much lovelier when one is alone. How commonplace and stupid it would be if I had a friend now sitting beside me, someone I had known at school, who would say, "By the way, I saw old Hilda the other day. You remember her, the one who was good at tennis? She's married with 2 children." And the bluebells beside us unnoticed, and the pigeons overhead unheard. I did not want anyone with me, not even Maxim. If Maxim had been there, I should not be lying as I am now, chewing a piece of grass, my eyes shut. I should have been watching him, watching his eyes, his expression, wonder if he liked it, if he was bored, wondering what he was thinking. Now I could relax. None of these things mattered. Maxim was in London. How lovely it was to be alone again. No, I did not mean that. It was disloyal, wicked. It was not what I meant. Maxim was my life and my world. I got up from the bluebells and called sharply to Jasper. We set off together down the valley to the beach. The tide was out, the sea very calm and remote. It looked like a great placid lake out there in the bay. I could not imagine it rough now, any more than I could imagine winter in summer. There was no wind, and the sun shone on the lapping water where it ran into the little pools in the rocks. Jasper scrambled up the rocks immediately, glancing back at me, one ear blown back against his head, giving him an odd, rakish appearance. "Not that way, Jasper," I said. He cared nothing for me, of course. He lopped off, deliberately disobedient. "What a nuisance he is," I said aloud, and I scrambled up the rocks after him, pretending to myself I did not want to go to the other beach. Oh, well, I thought, it can't be helped. After all, Maxim is not with me. It's nothing to do with me. I splashed through the pools on the rocks, humming a tune. The cave looked different when the tide was out, less formidable. There was only about 3 foot of water in the tiny harbor. A boat would just float there comfortably, I supposed, at dead low water. The buoy was still there. It was painted white and green. I had not noticed that before. Perhaps because it had been raining, the coloring was indistinct. There was no one on the beach. I walked across the shingle to the other side of the cove and climbed the low stone wall of the jetty arm. Jasper ran on ahead as though it was his custom. There was a ring in the wall and an iron ladder descending to the water. That's where the dinghy would be tied, I supposed, and one would climb to it from the ladder. The buoy was just opposite, about 30 feet away. There was something written on it. I craned my neck sideways to read the lettering Je reviens, which in French means I'll be back. What a funny name. Not like a boat. Perhaps it had been a French boat, though a fishing boat. Fishing boats sometimes had names like that. Happy return. I'm here. Those sort of names. Je reviens. I come back. Oh, I come back. Yes, I suppose it was quite a good name for a boat. Only it had not been right for that particular boat, which would never come back again. It must be cold sailing out there in the bay, beyond the beacon away on the headland. The sea was calm in the bay, but even today, when it was so still, Out there round the headland there was a ripple of white foam on the surface of the water where the tide was racing. A small boat would heel to the wind when she rounded the headland and came out of the land-locked bay. The sea would splash inboard, perhaps, run down the deck. The person at the tiller would wipe the spray out of her eyes and hair, glance up at the straining mast. I wondered what color the boat had been. Green and white, perhaps, like the buoy. Not very big, Frank had said, with a little cabin. Jasper was sniffing at the iron ladder. "Come away," I said. "I don't want to go in after you." I went back along the harbor wall to the beach. The cottage did not seem so remote and sinister at the edge of the wood as it had done before. The sun made such a difference. No rain today, pattering on the roof. I walked slowly up the beach towards it. After all, it was only a cottage, with nobody living in it. There was nothing to be frightened of. Nothing at all. Any place seemed damp and sinister when it had been uninhabited for a certain time. Even new bungalows and places. Besides, they had had moonlight picnics and things here. Weekend visitors probably used to come and bathe and then go for a sail in the boat. I stood looking into the neglected garden with choked nettles. Someone ought to come and tidy it up. One of the gardeners. There was no need to leave it like this. I pushed the little gate and went to the door of the cottage. It was not entirely closed. I was certain I had closed it the last time. Jasper began growling, sniffing under the door. "Don't, Jasper," I said. He went on sniffing deeply, his nose thrust to the lintel. I pushed the door open and looked inside. It was very dark, like it had been before. Nothing was changed. The cobwebs still clung to the rigging of the model boats. The door into the boat store at the end of the room was open, though. Jasper growled again, and there was a sound of something falling. Jasper barked furiously, and darting between my legs into the room, he tore to the open door of the store. I followed him, heart beating, and then stood uncertainly in the middle of the room. "Jasper, come back! Don't be a fool," I said. He stood in the doorway, still barking furiously, an hysterical note in his voice. Something was there, then, inside the store. Not a rat. He would have gone for a rat. "Jasper! Jasper, come here," I said. He would not come. I went slowly to the door of the store. "Is there anybody there?" I said. No one answered. I bent down to Jasper, putting my hand on his collar, and looked round the edge of the door. Someone was sitting in the corner against the wall. Someone who, from his crouching position, was even more frightened than I. It was Ben. He was trying to hide behind one of the sails. "What is the matter? Do you want something?" I said. He blinked at me stupidly, his mouth slightly open. "I'm not doing nothing," he said. "Quiet, Jasper," I scolded, putting my hand over his muzzle, and I took my belt off and ran it through his collar as a leash. "What do you want, Ben?" I said a little bolder this time. He did not answer. He watched me with his sly idiot's eyes. "I think you had better come out," I said. "Mr. De Winter doesn't like people walking in and out of here." He shambled to his feet, grinning furtively, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. The other hand he kept behind his back. "What have you got, Ben?" I said. He obeyed me like a child, showing me the other hand. There was a fishing line in it. "I'm not doing nothing," he repeated. "Does that line belong here?" I asked. "Eh?" he said. "Listen, Ben, you can take that line if you want to, but you mustn't do it again. It's not honest taking people's things." He said nothing. He blinked at me and wriggled. "Come along," I said firmly. I went into the main room and he followed me. Jasper had stopped barking and was now sniffing at Ben's heels. I did not want to stop any longer in the cottage. I walked quickly out into the sunshine, Ben shuffling behind me. Then I shut the door. You had better go home, I said to Ben. He held the fishing line clutched to his heart like a treasure. You won't put me in an asylum, will you? I saw then that he was trembling with fright. His hands were shaking, and his eyes were fixed on mine in supplication, like a dumb thing. Of course not, I said gently. I done nothing, he repeated. I never told no one. I don't want you to put me to the asylum. A tear rolled down his dirty face. That's all right, Ben. No one will put you away. But you must not go to the cottage again. I turned away, and he came after me, pawing at my hand. Here, I got something for you. He smiled foolishly. He beckoned with his finger and turned towards the beach. I went with him, and he bent down and picked up a flat stone by a rock. There was a little heap of shells under the stone. He chose one and presented it to me. That's yours, he said. Thank you. It's very pretty, I said. He grinned again, rubbing his ear, his fright forgotten. You've got angel eyes, he said. I glanced down at the shell again, rather taken aback. I did not know what to say. You're not like the other one, he said. What do you mean? What other one? He shook his head. His eyes were sly again. He laid his finger against his nose. Tall and dark she was. She gave you the feeling of a snake. I seen her here with me own eyes. By night she come. I seen her. He paused, watching me intently. I did not say anything. I looked in on her once, he said, and she turned to me, she did. You don't know me, do you, she said. You've never seen me here, and you won't again. If I catch you looking at me through the windows here, I'll have you put to the asylum, she said. You wouldn't like that, would you? They're cruel to people in the asylum, she said. I won't say nothing, madam, I said, and I touched me cap like this. He pulled at his sou'wester. She's gone now, ain't she? He said anxiously. I don't know who you mean. No one is going to put you in an asylum. Good afternoon, Ben. I turned away and walked up the beach to the path, dragging Jasper by his belt. Poor wretch. He was potty, of course. He did not know what he was talking about. It was hardly likely that anyone would threaten him here with the asylum. Maxim had said he was quite harmless, and so had Frank. Perhaps he had heard himself discussed once among his own people, and the memory of it lingered like an ugly picture in the mind of a child. He would have a child's mentality, too, regarding likes and dislikes. He would take a fancy to a person for no reason, and be friendly one day perhaps, and sullen the next. He had been friendly with me because I had said he could keep the fishing line. Tomorrow, if I met him, he might not know me. It was absurd to notice anything said by an idiot. I glanced back over my shoulder at the cove. The tide had begun to turn and was swirling slowly round the arm of the harbor wall. Ben had disappeared over the rocks. The beach was deserted again. I could just see the stone chimney of the cottage through a gap in the dark trees. I had a sudden, unaccountable desire to run. I pulled at Jasper's leash and panted up the steep, narrow path through the woods, not looking back any more. Had I been offered all the treasures in the world, I could not have turned and gone down to the cottage or the beach again. It was as though someone waited down there, in the little garden where the nettles grew, someone who watched and listened. Jasper barked as we ran together. He thought it was some kind of new game. He kept trying to bite the belt and worry it. I had not realized how closely the trees grew together here, their roots stretching across the path like tendrils ready to trip one. They ought to clear all this, I thought as I ran, catching my breath. Maxim should get the men onto it. There was no sense or beauty in this undergrowth. That tangle of shrubs there should be cut down to bring light to the path. It was dark, much too dark. The naked eucalyptus tree stifled by brambles looked like the white beached limb of a skeleton, and there was a black earthy stream running underneath it, choked with the muddied rains of years trickling silently to the beach below. The birds did not sing here as they did in the valley. It was quiet in a different way, and even as I ran and panted up the path, I could hear the wash of the sea as the tide crept into the cove. I understood why Maxim disliked the path in the cove. I disliked it too. I had been a fool to come this way. I should have stayed on the other beach, on the white shingle, and come home by the happy valley. I was glad to come out onto the lawn and see the house there in the hollow, solid and secure. The woods were behind me. I would ask Robert to bring me my tea under the chestnut tree. I glanced at my watch. It was earlier than I thought, not yet 4. I would have to wait a bit. It was not the routine at Manderley to have tea before 1/2 past. I was glad Frith was out. Robert would not make such a performance of bringing the tea out into the garden. As I wandered across the lawn to the terrace, my eye was caught by the gleam of sunshine on something metal showing through the green of the rhododendron leaves at the turn in the drive. I shaded my eyes with my hand to see what it was. It looked like the radiator of a car. I wondered if someone had called. If they had, though, they would have driven up to the house, not left their car concealed like that from the house, at the turn of the drive, by the shrubs. I went a little closer. Yes, it was a car, all right. I could see the wings now on the hood. What a funny thing. Visitors never did that as a rule, and the tradesmen went round the back way by the old stables and the garage. It was not Frank Morris's, I knew that well. This was a long, low car, a sports car. I wondered what I had better do. If it was a caller, Robert would have shown them into the library or the drawing room. If the drawing room, they would be able to see me as I came across the lawn. I did not want to face a caller dressed like this. I should have to ask them to stay to tea. I hesitated at the edge of the lawn, for no reason, perhaps because the sunlight flickered a moment on the glass. I looked up at the house, and as I did so, I noticed with surprise that the shutters of one of the windows in the west wing had been opened up. Somebody stood by the window, a man, and then he must have caught sight of me because he drew back abruptly, and a figure behind him put up an arm and closed the shutters. The arm belonged to Mrs. Danvers. I recognized the black sleeve. I wondered for a minute if it was a public day and she was showing the rooms. It could not be so, though, because Frith always did that, and Frith was out. Besides, the rooms in the west wing were not shown to the public. I had not even been into them myself yet. No, I knew it was on a public day. The public never came on a Tuesday. Perhaps it was something to do with a repair in one of the rooms. It was odd, though, the way the man had been looking out directly. He saw me, and he whipped back into the room, and the shutters were closed. And the car, too, drawn up behind the rhododendrons so that it could not be seen from the house. Still, that was up to Mrs. Danvers. It was nothing to do with me. If she had friends she took to the west wing, it was not exactly my affair. I had never known it happen before, though. Odd that it should occur on the only day Maxim was from home. I strolled rather self-consciously across the lawn to the house, aware that they might be watching me still from a chink in the shutters. I went up the steps and through the big front door to the hall. There was no sign of a strange cap or stick, and no card on the salver. Evidently, this was not an official visitor. Well, It was not my affair. I went into the flower room and washed my hands in the basin to save going upstairs. It would be awkward if I met them face to face on the stairs or somewhere. I remembered I had left my knitting in the morning room before lunch, and I went along through the drawing room to fetch it, the faithful Jasper at my heels. The morning room door was open, and I noticed that my bag of knitting had been moved. I had left it on the divan, and it had been picked up and pushed behind a cushion. There was an imprint of a person on the fabric of the divan where my knitting had been before. Someone had sat down there recently, picked up my knitting because it had been in the way. The chair by the desk had also been moved. It looked as though Mrs. Danvers entertained her visitor in the morning room when Maxim and I were out of the way. I felt rather uncomfortable. I would rather not know. Jasper was sniffing around the divan and wagging his tail. He was not suspicious of the visitor anyway. I took my bag of knitting and went out. As I did so, the door in the large drawing room that led to the stone passage and the back premises opened, and I heard voices. I darted back into the morning room again just in time. I had not been seen. I waited behind the door, frowning at Jasper, who stood in the doorway, looking at me, his tongue hanging out, wagging his tail. The little wretch would give me away. I stood very still, holding my breath. Then I heard Mrs. Danvers speak. "I expect she has gone to the library," she said. "She's come home early for some reason. If she has gone to the library, you will be able to go through the hall without her seeing you. Wait here while I go and see." I knew they were talking about me. I began to feel more uncomfortable than ever. It was so furtive, the whole business, and I did not want to catch Mrs. Danvers in the wrong. Then Jasper turned his head sharply towards the drawing room. He trotted out, wagging his tail. "Hello, you little tyke," I heard the man say. Jasper began to bark excitedly. I looked around desperately for somewhere to hide. Hopeless, of course, and then I heard a footstep quite close to my ear, and the man came into the room. He did not see me at first because I was behind the door, but Jasper made a dive at me, still barking with delight. The man wheeled around suddenly and saw me. I have never seen anyone look more astonished. I might have been the burglar, and he the master of the house. "I beg your pardon," he said, looking me up and down. He was a big, hefty fellow, good-looking in a rather flashy, sunburnt way. He had the hot blue eyes usually associated with heavy drinking and loose living. His hair was reddish like his skin. In a few years, he would run to fat, his neck bulging over the back of his collar. His mouth gave him away. It was too soft, too pink. I could smell the whiskey in his breath from where I stood. He began to smile, the sort of smile he would give to every woman. "I hope I haven't startled you," he said. I came out from behind the door, looking, no doubt, as big a fool as I felt. "No, of course not," I said. "I heard voices. I was not quite sure who it was. I did not expect any callers this afternoon." "What a shame," he said heartily. "It's too bad of me to butt in on you like this. I hope you'll forgive me. The fact is, I just popped in to see old Danny. She's a very old friend of mine." "Oh, of course, it's quite all right," I said. "Dear old Danny," he said. "She's so anxious, bless her, not to disturb anyone. She didn't want to worry you." "Oh, it does not matter at all," I said. "I was watching Jasper, who was jumping up and pawing at the man in delight." "This little beggar hasn't forgotten me, has he?" said, grown into a jolly little beast. He was quite a youngster when I saw him last. He's too fat, though. He needs more exercise. "I've just taken him for a long walk," I said. "Have you really? How sporting of you," he said. He went on patting Jasper and smiling at me in a familiar way. Then he pulled out his cigarette case. "Have one?" he said. "I don't smoke," I told him. "Don't you really?" He took one himself and lighted it. I never minded those things, but it seemed odd to me in someone else's room. It was surely rather bad manners, not polite to me. "How's old Max?" he said. I was surprised at his tone. It sounded as though he knew him well. It was queer to hear Maxim talked of as Max. No one called him that. "He's very well, thank you," I said. "He's gone up to London." "And left the bride all alone?" "Why, that's too bad. Isn't he afraid someone will come and carry you off?" He laughed, opening his mouth. I did not like his laugh. There was something offensive about it. I did not like him either. Just then Mrs. Danvers came into the room. She turned her eyes upon me, and I felt quite cold. Oh God, I thought, how she must hate me. "Hello, Danny, there you are," said the man. "All your precautions were in vain. The mistress of the house was hiding behind the door." And he laughed again. Mrs. Danvers did not say anything. She just went on looking at me. "Well, aren't you going to introduce me?" he said. "After all, it's the usual thing to do, isn't it, to pay one's respect to a bride?" "This is Mr. Favell, madam," said Mrs. Danvers. She spoke quietly, rather unwillingly. I don't think she wanted to introduce him to me. "How do you do?" I said, and then, with an effort to be polite, "Won't you stay to tea?" He looked very amused. He turned to Mrs. Danvers. "Now, isn't that a charming invitation?" he said. "I've been asked to stay to tea. By heaven, Danny, I have a good mind to." I saw her flash a look of warning at him. I felt very uneasy. It was all wrong, this situation. It ought not to be happening at all. "Well, perhaps you're right," he said. "It would have been a lot of fun all the same. I suppose I had better be going, hadn't I? Come and have a look at my car." He still spoke in a familiar, rather offensive way. I did not want to go and look at his car. I felt very awkward and embarrassed. "Come on," he said. "It's a jolly good little car, much faster than anything poor old Max ever has." I could not think of an excuse. The whole business was so forced and stupid. I did not like it. And why did Mrs. Danvers have to stand there looking at me with that smoldering look in her eyes? "Where is the car?" I said feebly. "Round the bend in the drive." I didn't drive to the door. I was afraid of disturbing you. I had some idea you probably rested in the afternoon. I said nothing. The lie was too obvious. We all walked out through the drawing room and into the hall. I saw him glance over his shoulder and wink at Mrs. Danvers. She did not wink in return. I hardly expected she would. She looked very hard and grim. Jasper frolicked out to the drive. He seemed delighted with the sudden appearance of this visitor whom he appeared to know so well. "I left my cap in the car, I believe," said the man, pretending to glance round the hall. "As a matter of fact, I didn't come in this way. I slipped round and bearded Danny in her den. Come out to see the car, too?" He looked inquiringly at Mrs. Danvers. She hesitated, watching me out of the tail of her eye. "No," she said. "No, I don't think I'll come out now. Goodbye, Mr. Jack." He seized her hand and shook it heartily. "Goodbye, Danny. Take care of yourself. You know where to get in touch with me always. It's done me a power of good to see you again." He walked out onto the drive, Jasper dancing at his heels, and I followed him slowly, feeling very uncomfortable still. "Dear old Manderley," he said, looking up at the windows. "The place hasn't changed much. I suppose Danny sees to that. What a wonderful woman she is, hey?" "Yes, she's very efficient," I said. "And what do you think of it all? Like being buried down here?" "I'm very fond of Manderley," I said stiffly. "Weren't you living somewhere down in the south of France when Max met you? Monty, wasn't it? I used to know Monty well." "Yes, I was in Monte Carlo." We had come to see his car now. a green sports thing typical of its owner. "What do you think of it?" he said. "Very nice," I said politely. "Come for a run to the lodge gates," he said. "No, I don't think I will," I said. "I'm rather tired." "You don't think it would look too good for the mistress of Manderley to be seen driving with someone like me, is that it?" he said, and he laughed, shaking his head at me. "Oh, no," I said, turning rather red. "No, really." He went on looking me up and down in his amused way with those familiar, unpleasant blue eyes. I felt like a barmaid. "Oh, well," he said, "we mustn't lead the bride astray, must we, Jasper? It wouldn't do at all." He reached for his cap and an enormous pair of motoring gloves. He threw his cigarette away on the drive. "Goodbye," he said, holding out his hand. "It's been a lot of fun meeting you." "Goodbye," I said. "By the way," he said carelessly, "it would be very sporting and grand of you if you did not mention this little visit of mine to Max. He doesn't exactly approve of me, I'm afraid. I don't know why, and it might get poor old Danny into trouble." "No," I said awkwardly. "No, all right." "That's very sporting of you. Sure you won't change your mind and come for a run?" "No, I don't think I will, if you don't mind." "Bye-bye, then. Perhaps I'll come and look you up one day." "Get down, Jasper, you devil. You'll scratch my paint. I say, I call it a damn shame Max going up to London and leaving you alone like this." "I don't mind. I like being alone," I said. "Do you, by Jove? What an extraordinary thing. It's all wrong, you know, against nature. How long have you been married? 3 months, isn't it?" "About that," I said. "I say, I wish I'd gotten a bride of 3 months waiting for me at home. I'm a poor, lonesome bachelor." He laughed again and pulled his cap down over his eyes. "Fare you well," he said, starting up the engine, and the car shot down the drive snorting, explosive fury from the exhaust, while Jasper stood looking after it, his ears drooping, his tail between his legs. "Oh, come on, Jasper," I said. "Don't be so idiotic." I walked slowly back to the house. Mrs. Danvers had disappeared. I stood in the hall and rang the bell. Nothing happened for about 5 minutes. I rang. Presently Alice appeared, her face rather aggrieved. "Yes, madam," she said. "Oh, Alice," I said, "isn't Robert there? I rather fancied my tea out under the chestnut tree." "Robert went to the post this afternoon and isn't back yet, madam," said Alice. "Mrs. Danvers gave him to understand you would be late for tea. Frith is out too, of course. If you want your tea now, I can get it for you. I don't think it's quite 4:30 yet." "Oh, it doesn't matter, Alice. I'll wait till Robert comes back. I suppose when Maxim was away things automatically became slack. I had never known Frith and Robert to be out at the same time. It was Frith's day, of course, and Mrs. Danvers had sent Robert to the post, and I myself was understood to have gone for a long walk. That man Favell had chosen his time well to pay his call on Mrs. Danvers. It was almost too well chosen. There was something not right about it, I was certain of that. And then he had asked me not to say anything to Maxim. It was all very awkward. I did not want to get Mrs. Danvers into trouble or make any sort of scene. More important still, I did not want to worry Maxim. I wondered who he was, this man Favell. He had called Maxim Max. No one ever called him Max. I had seen it written once, on the fly-leaf of a book, the letters thin and slanting, curiously pointed, the tail of the M very definite, very long. I thought there was only one person who had ever called him Max. As I stood there in the hall, undecided about my tea, wondering what to do, the thought suddenly came to me that perhaps Mrs. Danvers was dishonest, that all this time she was engaged in some business behind Maxim's back, and coming back early as I had today, I had discovered her and this man, an accomplice, who had then bluffed his way out by pretending to be familiar with the house and with Maxim. I wondered what they had been doing in the West Wing. Why had they closed the shutters when they saw me on the lawn? I was filled with vague disquiet. Frith and Robert had been away. The maids were generally in their bedrooms changing during the afternoon. Mrs. Danvers would have run of the place. Supposing this man was a thief, and Mrs. Danvers was in his pay. There were valuable things in the West Wing. I had a sudden, rather terrifying impulse to creep upstairs now to the West Wing and go into those rooms and see for myself. Robert was not back yet. I would just have time before tea. I hesitated, glancing at the gallery. The house seemed very still and quiet. The servants were all in their own quarters beyond the kitchen. Jasper lapped noisily at his drinking bowl below the stairs, the sound echoing into the great stone hall. I began to walk upstairs. My heart was beating in a queer, excited way. Chapter. Since chapter 14 is very small, let's do it now. Chapter 14. I found myself in the corridor where I had stood that first morning. I had not been there since, nor had I wished to go. The sun streamed in from the windows in the alcove and made gold patterns on the dark paneling. There was no sound at all. I was aware of the same musty, unused smell that had been before. I was uncertain which way to go. The plan of the rooms was not familiar to me. I remembered then that the last time Mrs. Danvers had come out of a door here just behind me, and it seemed to me that the position of the room would make it the one I wanted, whose windows looked out upon the lawns to the sea. I turned the handle of the door and went inside. It was dark, of course, because of the shutters. I felt for the electric light switch on the wall and turned it on. I was standing in a little ante-room, a dressing room I judged, with big wardrobes round the wall, and at the end of this room was another door, open, leading to a larger room. I went through this room and turned on the light. My first impression was one of shock because the room was fully furnished, as though in use. I had expected to see chairs and tables swathed in dust sheets, and dust sheets too over the great double bed against the wall. Nothing was covered up. There were brushes and combs on the dressing table, scent and powder. The bed was made up. I saw the gleam of white linen on the pillowcase, and the tip of a blanket beneath the quilted coverlet. There were flowers on the dressing table, and on the table beside the bed. Flowers, too, on the carved mantelpiece. A satin dressing gown lay on the chair, and a pair of bedroom slippers beneath. For one desperate moment I thought that something had happened to my brain, that I was seeing back into time, and looking upon the room as it used to be, before she died. In a minute Rebecca herself would come back into the room, sit down before the looking-glass at her dressing table, humming a tune, reach for her comb and run it through her hair. If she sat there, I should see her reflection in the glass, and she would see me too, standing like this by the door. Nothing happened. I went on standing there, waiting for something to happen. It was the clock ticking on the wall that brought me back to reality again. The hand stood at 4:25. My watch said the same. There was something sane and comforting about the ticking of the clock. It reminded me of the present, and that tea would soon be ready for me on the lawn. I walked slowly into the middle room. No, it was not used. It was not lived in any more. Even the flowers could not destroy the musty smell. The curtains were drawn and the shutters were closed. Rebecca would never come back to the room again. Even if Mrs. Danvers did put the flowers on the mantelpiece and the sheets upon the bed, they would not bring her back. She was dead. She had been dead now for a year. She lay buried in the crypt of the church with all the other dead De Winters. I could hear the sound of the sea very plainly. I went to the window and swung back the shutter. Yes, I was standing at the same window where Mr. Favell and Mrs. Danvers had stood half an hour ago. The long shaft of daylight made the electric light look false and yellow. I opened the shutter a little more. The daylight cast a white beam upon the bed. It shone upon the nightdress case laying on the pillow. It shone on the top glass of the dressing table, on the brushes, and on the scent bottles. The daylight gave an even greater air of reality to the room. When the shutter was closed and it had been lit by electricity, the room had more the appearance of a setting on a stage, the scene set between performances, the curtain having fallen for the night, the evening over, and the first act set for tomorrow's matinee. But the daylight made the room vivid and alive. I forgot the musty smell and the drawn curtains of the other windows. I was a guest again, an uninvited guest. I had strolled into my hostess's bedroom by mistake. Those were her brushes on the dressing table. That was her dressing gown and slippers laid out upon the chair. I realized for the first time since I had come into the room that my legs were trembling, weak as straw. I sat down on the stool by the dressing table. My heart no longer beat in a strange, excited way. It felt heavy as lead. I looked about me in the room with a sort of dumb stupidity. Yes, it was a beautiful room. Mrs. Danvers had not exaggerated that first evening. It was the most beautiful room in the house. That exquisite mantelpiece, the ceiling, the carved bedstead, and the curtain hangings, even the clock on the wall and the candlesticks upon the dressing table beside me, all were things I would have loved and almost worshipped had they been mine. They were not mine, though. They belonged to somebody else. I put out my hand and touched the brushes. One was more worn than its fellow. I understood it well. There was always one brush that had the greater use. Often you forget to use the other, and when they were taken to be washed, there was one that was still quite clean and untouched. How white and thin my face looked in the glass, my hair hanging lank and straight. Did I always look like this? Surely I had more color as a rule. The reflection stared back at me, sallow and plain. I got up from the stool and went and touched the dressing gown on the chair. I picked up the slippers and held them in my hand. I was aware of a growing sense of horror turning into despair. I touched the quilt on the bed, traced my fingers the monogram on the nightdress, R.D.W., interwoven and interlaced. The letters were corded and strong against the gold satin material. The nightdress was inside the case, thin as gossamer, apricot in color. I touched it, drew it out of the case, put it against my face. It was cold, quite cold, but there was a dim mustiness about it still where the scent had been, the scent of white azalea. I folded it and put it back into the case, and as I did so, I noticed with a sick, dull aching in my heart that there were creases in the nightdress. The texture was ruffled. It had not been touched or laundered since it was last worn. On a sudden impulse, I moved away from the bed and went back to the little anteroom where I had seen the wardrobes. I opened one of them. It was as I thought. The wardrobe was full of clothes. There were evening dresses here. I caught the shimmer of silver over the top of the white bags that enfolded them. There was a piece of gold brocade. There, next to it, was velvet, wine-colored and soft. There was a train of white satin dripping on the floor of the wardrobe. Peeping out from a piece of tissue paper on a shelf above was an ostrich feather fan. The wardrobe smelt stuffy, queer, the azalea scent so fragrant and delicate in the air, had turned stale inside the wardrobe, tarnishing the silver dresses and the brocade, and the breath of it wafted towards me now from the open doors, faded and old. I shut the doors. I went back into the bedroom once again. The gleam of light from the shutters still shone white and clear on the golden coverlet of the bed, picking out clearly and distinctly the tall, sloping R of the monogram. Then I heard a step behind me, and turning round, I saw Mrs. Danvers. I shall never forget the expression on her face. Triumphant, glowing, excited in a strange, unhealthy way. I felt very frightened. "Is anything the matter, madam?" she said. I tried to smile at her and could not. I tried to speak. "Are you feeling unwell?" she said, coming nearer to me, speaking very softly. I backed away from her. I believe if she had come any closer to me, I should have fainted. I felt her breath on my face. "I'm all right, Mrs. Danvers," I said after a moment. "I did not expect to see you. The fact is, I was looking up at the windows from the lawn. I noticed one of the shutters was not quite closed. I came up to see if I could fasten it." "I will fasten it," she said, and she went silently across the room and clamped back the shutter. The daylight had gone. The room looked unreal again in the false yellow light, unreal and ghastly. Mrs. Danvers came back and stood beside me. She smiled, and her manner, instead of being still and unbending as it usually was, became startlingly familiar, fawning even. "Why did you tell me the shutter was open?" she said. "I closed it before I left the room." "You opened it yourself, didn't you now? You wanted to see the room. Why have you never asked me to show it to you before?" "I was ready to show it to you every day. You only had to ask me." I wanted to run away, but I could not move. I went on watching her eyes. "Now you are here, let me show you everything," she said, her voice ingratiating and sweet as honey, horrible, false. "I know you want to see it all. You've wanted to for a long time, and you were too shy to ask. It's a lovely room, isn't it? The loveliest room you have ever seen." She took hold of my arm and walked me towards the bed. I could not resist her. I was like a dumb thing. The touch of her hand made me shudder, and her voice was low and intimate, a voice I hated and feared. That was her bed. It's a beautiful bed, isn't it? I kept the golden coverlet on it always. It was her favorite. Here is her nightdress inside the case. You've been touching it, haven't you? This was the nightdress she was wearing for the last time before she died. Would you like to touch it again? She took the nightdress from the case and held it before me. "Feel it. Hold it," she said. "How soft and light it is, isn't it? I haven't washed it since she wore it for the last time. I put it out like this, and the dressing gown and slippers, just as I put them out for her the night she never came back, the night she drowned." She folded up the nightgown and put it back in the case. "I did everything for her, you know," she said, taking my arm, leading me to the dressing gown and slippers. "We tried maid after maid, but not one of them suited. 'You made me better than anyone, Danny,' she used to say. 'I won't have anyone but you. Look, this is her dressing gown. She was much taller than you can see by the length. Put it up against you. It comes down to your ankles.' She had a beautiful figure. These are her slippers. 'Throw me my slippers, Danny,' she used to say. She had little feet for her height. 'Put your hands inside the slippers. They are quite small and narrow, aren't they? She forced the slippers over my hands, smiling all the while, watching my eyes. You never would have thought she was so tall, would you? She said. These slippers would fit a tiny foot. She was so slim, too. You would forget her height until she stood beside you. She was every bit as tall as me, but lying there in bed, she looked quite a slip of a thing, with her mass of dark hair standing out from her face like a halo. She put the slippers back on the floor and laid the dressing gown on the chair. You've seen her brushes, haven't you? She said, taking me to the dressing table. There they are, just as she used them, unwashed and untouched. I used to brush her hair for her every morning. Come on, Danny, hair drill, she would say, and I'd stand behind her by the stool here and brush away for 20 minutes at a time. She only wore it short for the last few years, you know. It came down below the waist when she was first married. Mr. De Winter used to brush it for her then. I've come into this room time and time again and seen him in his shirt sleeves with the two brushes in his hand. Harder, Max, harder, she would say, laughing up at him, and he would do as she told him. They would be dressing for dinner, you see, and the house filled with guests. Here I shall be late, he would say, throwing the brushes to me and laughing back at her. He was always laughing and gay then. She paused, her hand still resting on my arm. Everyone was angry when she cut her hair, but she did not care. It's nothing to do with anyone but myself, she would say. And of course, short hair was much easier for riding and sailing. She was painted on horseback, you know. A famous artist did it. The picture hung in the academy. Did you ever see it? I shook my head. No, I said, no. I understood it was the picture of the year, she went on, but Mr. De Winter did not care for it and would not have it at Manderley. I don't think he considered it did her justice. You would like to see her clothes, wouldn't you? She did not wait for my answer. She led me to the little anteroom and opened the wardrobes one by one. I keep her furs in here, she said. The moths have not gotten to them yet, and I doubt they ever will. I'm too careful. Feel the sable wrap. This was a Christmas present from Mr. De Winter. She told me the cost once, but I've forgotten it now. This chinchilla she wore in the evenings mostly, round her shoulders very often when the evenings were cold. This wardrobe here is full of her evening clothes. You opened it, didn't you? The latch is not quite closed. I believe Mr. De Winter liked her to wear silver mostly. But of course she could wear anything, stand any color. She looked beautiful in this velvet. Put it against your face. It's soft, isn't it? You can feel it, can't you? The scent is still fresh, isn't it? You could almost imagine she had only just taken it off. I would always know when she had been before me in the room. There would be a little whiff of her scent in the room. These are her underclothes, in this drawer. This pink set here she had never worn. She was wearing slacks, of course, and a shirt when she died. They were torn from her body in the water, though. There was nothing on the body when it was found, all those weeks afterwards. Her fingers tightened on my arm. She bent down to me, her skull's face close, her dark eyes searching mine. The rocks had battered her to bits, you know, she whispered, her beautiful face unrecognizable and both arms gone. Mr. De Winter identified her. He went up to Edgecombe to do it. He went quite alone. He was very ill at the time, but he would go. No one could stop him, not even Mr. Crawley. She paused, her eyes never leaving my face. I shall always blame myself for the accident, she said. It was my fault for being out that evening. I had gone into Kerrith for the afternoon and stayed there late, and Mrs. De Winter was up in London and not expected back until much later. That's why I did not hurry back. When I came in about 9:30, I heard she had returned just before 7, had her dinner, and went out again. Down to the beach, of course. I felt worried then. It was blowing up from the southwest. She would never have gone if she had been in. She always listened to me. I won't go out this evening if it's not fit, I should have said, and she would have answered me, "All right, Danny, you old fusspot." And we would have sat up here talking, no doubt, she telling me all she had done up in London, like she always did. My arm was bruised and numb from the pressure of her fingers. I could see how tightly the skin was stretched across her face, showing the cheekbones. There were little patches of yellow beneath her ears. Mr. De Winter had been dining with Mr. Crawley down at his house, she went on. I don't know what time he got back. I dare say it was after 11. But it began to blow quite hard just before midnight, and she had not come back. I went downstairs, but there were no lights under the library door. I came upstairs again and knocked on the dressing-room door. Mr. De Winter answered at once. "Who is it? What do you want?" he said. I told him I was worried about Mrs. De Winter not being back. He waited a moment, and then he came and opened the door in his dressing gown. "She's spending the night down at the cottage, I expect," he said. "I should go to bed if I were you. She won't come back here to sleep if it goes on like this." He looked tired, and I did not like to disturb him. After all, she spent many nights at the cottage, and had sailed in every sort of weather. She might not even have gone for a sail, just wanted the night at the cottage as a change after London. I said good night to Mr. De Winter and went back to my room. I did not sleep, though. I kept wondering what she was doing. She paused again. I did not want to hear any more. I wanted to get away from her, away from the room. "I sat on my bed until 5:30, she said, and then I couldn't wait there any longer. I got up and put on my coat and went down to the woods, to the beach. It was getting light, but there was still a misty sort of rain falling, although the wind had dropped. When I got to the beach, I saw the buoy there in the water and the dinghy, but the boat had been gone. It seemed to me that I could not see the cove in the gray morning light, feel the thin drizzle on my face, and peering through the mist could make out, shadowy and indistinct, the low, dark outline of the buoy. Mrs. Danvers loosened the pressure on my arm. Her hand fell back against her side. Her voice lost all expression, became the hard, mechanical voice of every day. "One of the buoys was washed up at Kerrith in the afternoon," she said, "and another was found the next day by some crabbers on the rocks below the headland. Bits and pieces of rigging, too, would come in with the tide." She turned away from me and closed the chest of drawers. She straightened one of the pictures on the wall. She picked up a piece of fluff from the carpet. I stood watching her, not knowing what to do. "You know now," she said, "why Mr. De Winter does not use these rooms any more. Listen to the sea." Even with the windows closed and the shutters fastened, I could hear it, a low, sullen murmur as the waves broke on the white shingle in the cove. The tide would be coming in fast now and running up the beach nearly to the stone cottage. "He has not used these rooms since the night she was drowned. He had his things moved out from the dressing room. We made up one of the rooms at the end of the corridor. I don't think he slept much even there. He used to sit in the armchair. There would be cigarette ash all around it in the morning, and in the daytime Frith would hear him in the library, pacing up and down, up and down, up and down. I too could see the ash on the floor beside the chair. I too could hear his footsteps. 1, 2, 1, 2, backwards and forwards across the library. Mrs. Danvers closed the door softly between the bedroom and the anteroom where we were standing and put out the light. I could not see the bed any more, nor the nightdress case upon the pillow, nor the dressing table, nor the slippers by the chair. She crossed the anteroom and put her hand on the knob of the door and stood waiting for me to follow her. I come to the rooms and dust them myself every day, she said. If you want to come again, you only have to tell me. Ring me on the house telephone. I shall understand. I don't allow the maids up here. No one ever comes but me. Her manner was fawning again, intimate and unpleasant. The smile on her face was a false, unnatural thing. Sometimes, when Mr. De Winter is away and you feel lonely, you might like to come up to these rooms and sit here. You only have to tell me. They are such beautiful rooms. You would not think she had been gone now for so long, would you? Not by the way the rooms are kept. You would think she had just gone out for a little while and would be back in the morning. I forced a smile. I could not speak. My throat felt dry and tight. It's not only this room, she said. It's in the many rooms in the house, in the morning room, in the hall, even in the little flower room. I feel her everywhere. You do too, don't you? She stared at me cautiously. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes when I walk along the corridor here, I fancy I hear her just behind me. That quick, light footstep, I could not mistake it anywhere. And in the minstrel's gallery above the hall, I've seen her leaning there in the evenings in the old days, looking down at the hall below and calling to the dogs. I can fancy her there now from time to time. It's almost as though I catch the sound of her dress sweeping the stairs as she comes down to dinner. She went on looking at me, watching my eyes. Do you think she can see us, talking to one another now? She said slowly. Do you think the dead come back and watch the living? I swallowed. I dug my nails into my hands. I don't know, I said. I don't know. My voice sounded high-pitched and unnatural, not my voice at all. Sometimes I wonder, she whispered. Sometimes I wonder if she comes back here to Manderley and watches you and Mr. De Winter together. We stood there by the door, staring at one another. I could not take my eyes away from hers. How dark and somber they were in that white skull face of hers. How malevolent, how full of hatred. Then she opened the door into the corridor. Robert is back now, she said. He came back a quarter of an hour ago. He has orders to take your tea out under the chestnut tree. She stepped aside for me to pass. I stumbled out onto the corridor, not looking where I was going. I did not speak to her. I went down the stairs blindly and turned the corner and pushed through the door that led to my own rooms in the east wing. I shut the door of my room and turned the key and put the key in my pocket. Then I lay down on my bed and closed my eyes. I felt deadly sick. Chapter. I am so happy I got to read those 2 chapters to you, and I enjoyed them. always more questions than answers. I too am wondering who Favell is and why he came to the house when Robert and Frith were out, and while our unnamed narrator was out on her walk, and of course, while Maxim, is away in London. Mrs. Danvers' facial expressions were very cautious and tight when he was speaking to the new Mrs. De Winter. And what of Ben? What about him saying that he did not see anything? Someone threatened him. I thought at first it might be Rebecca, but then I thought maybe it was Mrs. Danvers. Whomever it was, he is very frightened. He's very frightened that he'll be put in an asylum if he says anything. I did enjoy that UN found a sense of peace and happiness being in Happy Valley, and it reminded me of the exercise that I do, that I've spoken about, I'm sure, plenty of times, that one of the tools in the artist's way is that you go out on your own and you fill the well and you enjoy whatever it is that you're doing without having anyone else with you to entertain or talk to or take you away from the beauty of using Happy Valley as an example. The bluebells and the azaleas and the pigeons in the trees, all those things tend to go unnoticed when we are with someone as opposed to when we are alone. And I really enjoyed her enjoying herself and taking in all this beauty and letting it allow her to be happy. But I do believe that she misses Maxim, but I also believe that she loves her independence too. There are things that are very unsettling whenever she enters into a space that was occupied by Rebecca, whether it's the boathouse cottage or the morning room, or now was very brave of her to travel up the stairs to the West Wing. And if I don't remember anything about the movie, but I do remember Mrs. Danvers and her being very haunting when she was taking Rebecca's things out and telling her to hold them and touch them, and how beautiful she looked, and showing her clothes and how she looked in them. I do remember that, and I do remember Joan Fontaine just being so overwhelmed with fear that she could never live up to this ghost. And it's bad enough that when someone dies, they automatically become a saint. It's like every wrong they ever did becomes forgotten because they are now deceased. And Rebecca most certainly is a saint in this house now that she is gone. And I am wondering what happened, if she was such a great sail, how she drowned. So I did get this section completed, and look at that gorgeous hair. Thank you for being here. I will see you, as always, in the next one. Bye.